Oh no, the Panthers have done it again against the Habs. They lead, and then the Habs force overtime and win it.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, December 31st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, and it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. That is Jacob Winans joining me on another edition of Winans Wednesday. You can follow him on X at JakeW_8. Shout out to everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Panther fans, we're fully back here once again on another edition of the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers, even where the Panthers are on the opposite end of comeback cats, where we've seen it so many times this month, 4 times in the month of December to be exact, where they've been down in the third period and they ended up winning the game. But it was the opposite for the Panthers as they had a 2-0 lead with less than 5 minutes left. And neither team had a goal in the first 40 as the Panthers were able to score twice. Brad Marchand on the power play, Sam Reinhart right off a draw. But a goal by Cole Caufield as he drove to the net. And then Nick Suzuki did it again, just like he did in April against the Panthers, where it was a goal to tie the game and then ended up winning it in overtime on the power play. And the Panthers only get 1 point out of it in this big swing game. So today we're going to discuss our takeaways when 3 duds and when we knew the game was lost. And then we're going to have our year in review since it's the last game of 2025. But Jacob, this one stings, man. And for the Panthers, I've been talking about this for weeks coming up to this because we saw how the standings were going. I was discussing how the Panthers had the tiebreaker over the Montreal Canadiens as far as regulation wins, and the Panthers were on their way. Daniil Tarasov was looking outstanding, but a mistake behind the net for him, mishandling the puck, and then the Habs going on the power play end up winning it with Tarasov out of his net where Nick Suzuki had an open net. But the Panthers, this is now, instead of tied, you're now 2 points behind the Habs here, and it's this one is going to. I know you look at this back to back and you see 3 out of 4 points, but man, it feels like a true missed opportunity.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad loss. There's no way to sugarcoat that. And the way it went most of the night, pretty evenly matched game for most of the evening. There was a long stretch there in the second period where Montreal was really kind of controlling play, and then in the third period it was sort of the other way around. The Panthers controlled things for a long stretch of that third, and you're just thinking, you get the Reinhart goal, you're thinking that's insurance. You're up 2-0 with 4 minutes left. This is usually where the Panthers are at their best, and yeah, pretty inexcusable collapse. I mean, I understand the Caufield goal, definitely a missed interference call. Refs were probably not going to give the Panthers that one anyway, given the Panthers power play opportunities that they had. Refs weren't going to give them another one. Definitely a missed call though, and I thought Panthers really just didn't do a good job of bouncing back after that. The rest of the game on their heels, sort of lacking discipline, and then still have a chance to come out and win that game. And just a complete mental breakdown between the defense and Tarasov behind the net there. Confusion, not knowing what to do in a key moment. It's an unfortunate way to lose. And it was a game that the Panthers had a huge opportunity and full control to jump into a top 3 spot in the Atlantic and then hopefully get Matthew Tkachuk back. And instead, you're in a situation where you didn't gain any ground. You lost a point of ground, and yeah, it's unfortunate. It's just just a bad loss, and it was incredibly avoidable. And that's what makes it all the more frustrating, is that it was a game that they should have gotten 2 points and had it right in their hands and kind of gave it away.
No doubt. And with how quickly Caufield was able to score to make it 2-1, I mean, not even 30 seconds, not even 40 seconds after, just over 30. I will slightly disagree with you on the interference because I looked at it again, and Lane Hutson didn't make a complete stop before Aaron Ekblad did bump into him. I had to look at a different angle to see whether he stuck out maybe a hip or something. So maybe I didn't see the right angle there, but he did stop properly before Aaron Ekblad collided with him, and then it was a clear drive for Cole Caufield to the net. But for this one, it's crazy because the Panthers were having in the first period, we're actually keeping up with the Habs' speed, and you would have never guessed that the Panthers were on the second end of a back-to-back. Their breakout passes were connecting, they were getting the pucks in deep, but then it was a 12-minute and 56-second stretch between the first period and the second. The last shot that the Panthers got in the first was with 8 seconds left, and it went all the way until just over 7 minutes in the second period, where the Panthers were just not exiting their zone great, and they weren't even getting the pucks in deep to allow Sam Montembault to play the pucks and for the Panthers to get in on their forecheck and also create some separation. Most of the hits were mostly coming at the half walls, not really at the end boards for the Panthers, although they did have a big advantage in the hits category, 30-16 in this one. But for the Panthers, I mean, it really came down to that stretch where, yeah, it's 0-0 for them going into the final 20 minutes, but you feel like there was there was that span where the Panthers, if they could have gotten a little bit of control, that they could have at least maybe gotten a lead earlier, and then maybe this game is put away. But let's talk about, I know Daniil Tarasov had a few mistakes here on the night, but I do want to talk about what he did well. And the blocker side for Daniil Tarasov denied over and over again that chance from Cole Caufield that he got the blocker on, and then was able to stop, and then it hit the post as well, where he was down there. A great feed from Noah Dobson to Texier, so he got the pads down there. But look at where he was beat on the evening. 5-hole on the first one, glove side on the second one after the mishandle, and then he didn't even get a chance to get the blocker. I know it was on the side, but way out of his net and then the seam pass was there on the power play to take it away. But there was a few bright spots there for Daniil Tarasov, despite that 5-minute stretch where it went from hero to goat for Danny.
Yeah, I thought he played a really great game up until the last 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
There were a few key moments in that one where he made unbelievable saves. He robbed Caufield on a guaranteed goal early,
Mm-hmm.
and then huge double save on the breakaway for Suzuki. Stops him twice in a row at point blank. He really was everything you could ask for up until the last 5 minutes, and then the Caufield one leaves the 5-hole wide open. That's too easy for a guy like Cole Caufield. That's he's not going to miss that. And then and the Suzuki one, it's just a mental error behind the net, and then everyone's scrambling. And still, I really thought he should have had a chance to make that save on Suzuki. Even after the mistake, I felt like he was able to get back into position well enough where he should have had a better shot to make that save. But the positioning, he was just a little bit off his line, and it's unfortunate. For 55 minutes, he deserved 2 points in a shutout.
Yep.
And then for the last 5 in overtime, even in overtime, can't really fault him for anything on that play. It's a 4-on-3 power play. There's a ton of open ice, ton of space. Held his own up until the last play there. Can't fault him for his giving up that overtime goal, but you would just like to see more composure in the last 5 minutes, and it's no one needs to tell him that. I'm sure he's feeling it, but it looked like he was headed towards a shutout and ends up on the losing end and giving up 3 goals, and it's a tough way to end the night for him.
No doubt. He had an incredible double save on Suzuki after the Panthers went up 1-0 on that power play by Brad Marchand. But this game was also very wonky as well because scary moment with Evan Rodriguez getting a skate to the face as well. But there was also when it was still scoreless, there was a drive from Luke Cunnin to the net that the referee looked like he put his arm up temporarily and then put it down, and Tarasov went to the bench to try to get the extra attacker. And if the Montreal Canadiens would have shot it across the ice and got it into that empty net, what do you do there? And to think that the Panthers didn't force their first penalty until 33 minutes into the game, but also when they did draw that first penalty, that kind of was the shift in the momentum for the Panthers, because all 8 of their shots came in the final 7 minutes, and that was really kind of the start of the Panthers kind of getting their groove again, because we are going to see these stretches with a condensed schedule like this. But it was just a little bit of this was one of the more wonkier ones that I've seen in recent memory.
Yeah, definitely. Especially on the second night of back-to-back, I thought it was hard for anyone to really find their flow and get into a rhythm. Montreal definitely had the legs. I felt like early in the game, and then again for long stretches of the third period, they weren't really connecting on much. They were just fast. Panthers did a really good job of keeping up with the speed, even though they couldn't really find their footing offensively or sustain any kind of possession. Still have absolutely no idea what was going on with the ref on that one. I mean, it looked like a pretty clear penalty. It looked like he saw it, arm up for the hook, and then puts his arm down and then starts making some strange hand signal. I don't even know what he was trying to signal there after he puts his arm down. But if that would have ended up in the back of the Panthers net, you would think that they would have had to have done something to.
They would have had to talk about it.
Yeah, there would have had to have been something to make that right. But just a weird game there. Happy to see Evan Rodriguez ends up seemingly okay after a really scary play there. That kind of got a little bit brushed under the rug. Obviously, Goldie and Randy mentioned it on the broadcast, but took a skate right to the face, and it was dangerously close to the neck. It could have been a very different result. So very fortunate for him. And Evan Rodriguez, I don't know who he pissed off in a past life, but man, his face has taken a beating this year. It's high sticks, it's pucks, it's skates. I think every single part of the hockey anatomy and all the equipment, all the anything that you could use in the hockey game has somehow hit Evan Rodriguez in the face this season. So it was a weird game, definitely.
No doubt. And also there's a chance where Ed Toulousain was going on the forecheck and did a complete flip and landed on the side of his neck. That was also that hurt me just watching that one. That one live. But thankfully he was also okay and he was able to get up very quickly. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss our 3 duds of the game and the moment when we knew the game was lost. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way of kicking off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame limited time window for special offers dropped right outside FanDuel's app before the action starts. Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing in the NBA Happy Hour. Opening FanDuel app during the happy hour always brings something new: boosts, bonuses, and surprises. The timing is perfect, right before the game, right before the weekend starts. It adds extra energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's going on. During NBA Happy Hour every Friday, 6 to 7:30 Eastern, a little basketball, a little action, a whole lot of energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sports book of the NBA. And I'd like to thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day on the nation's #1 sports podcasting network. And if you already haven't already, go check out the new Everydayer Club. It's an access to a free audio feed for Locked On Florida Panthers, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or every other major app. An invite to the members-only Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat for listeners of this show. And you can check out everything in the show notes for more. So back on this Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, as the Panthers lose to the Montreal Canadiens by a final score of 3-2 in overtime, and now to 6-game losing streak against the Habs going back to 2024. The Panthers last beat the Habs back in February of that year. And it's the second game in a row where Nick Suzuki scored the game-tying goal and then won it in overtime as well. So it was a little bit of deja vu for the Panthers, but it's a loss for the Panthers, which means this is the time of the podcast where we are going to discuss our 3 duds of the game and the moment when we knew the game was lost. So number 3 dud for me, I'm going to go with Aaron Ekblad. I do believe that there needed to be a little bit more of leadership there for him when Daniil Tarasov was playing the puck. I know there's the difference between Sergei Bobrovsky and Daniil Tarasov, and this goes, and just looking at that play makes me appreciate how when Sergei Bobrovsky plays that puck, even when he's looking the other way at the near side boards, he's ready to get that puck on his backhand to the supporting defenseman near the far side half wall. We see it so many times over and over again about how quick Sergei Bobrovsky is with his decision making. But number 2 dud, I'm going to go with the entire Bennett line. At 5-on-5, they were 0 shots for, 12 shots against. That is putrid for a line that you have in your top 6. And yeah, they had a hard time with them getting out of their own end. So that is definitely the dud, one of the duds for me. And then number 1 dud, I said it, he had a great game, but quickly it turned a complete 180. I have to put it on Daniil Tarasov for the play, for the indecision. So I do, and crazy, I was just thinking, wow, he's going to get his first shutout in a Florida Panthers sweater. And unfortunately it doesn't happen. So he's my number 1 dud. How about you?
Yeah. My number 3, I'm going to go with Aaron Ekblad. I didn't love the play on the Caufield goal. If you have to, the size difference between him and Hutson, if you have to just bull him over, and just do whatever. You talk about it in basketball a lot when you talk about going under or going over a screen when you have a shooter. Cole Caufield is a shooter. It's very similar to play to basketball. Either if you're going to try to cut him off, go under that move from Hutson, or if you're not going to be able to get under that, you just got to go over him or push him over. And I think Ekblad sort of just stopped up and looked for a penalty call. Got to get through that one way or another. Mm-hmm. And then ends up on the ice for the Tarasov mistake too. Not really necessarily his fault there, but definitely thought could have been a little bit more solid defensively in that third period after they took a 2-0 lead. Number 2 dud for me, and it's tough because he scored the first goal of the game, but it's Brad Marchand.
Yep.
Inexcusable penalty in overtime. Just can't happen. They were controlling play in that overtime period. Sam Bennett already lays the hit on Matheson. He's already falling. He's not
separated the puck.
And separated the puck. Matheson's not a threat to make a play from his knees behind the goal line in the corner. There's nothing he can do from that position. So to come over and try to finish the hit and all 4 arms to the head, just a stupid play. And it's Marchand. We'll cut him some slack. I know it was a high intensity game, and he's trying to make a play there. It made no sense to me, and it just can't happen from your veteran. Just a bad mistake. And the number 1 dud is Daniil Tarasov, which again, it's funny how it works out, because if the Panthers win this game, he probably would have been my number 1 star of the game.
Same here.
Yeah, without a doubt. I was thinking he was going to be the number 1 star of this game.
Yep.
And ends up being the number 1 dud just because of a really unfortunate last few minutes and a big mistake behind the net that you just can't make. It's a learning moment. He'll bounce back from it. He at least showed me that he can be trusted to play in big games, because this had a playoff feel to it, and he showed up and played a great game up to the last few minutes. Just have to be more solid mentally, and he's one mistake away from getting a win in that one.
Yeah, just maybe got a little too nervous on that one for himself. And you mentioned Brad Marchand. They had a pregame ceremony to celebrate his 1,000th point that he got back on November 13th. Got the gold stick. And awesome to see that Eetu Luostarinen and Anton Lundell were also involved in the pregame ceremony. Luostarinen bringing them the wife and the mother flowers, while Lundell gave the kids the mini golden sticks there. And also Brad Marchand had an outstanding power play goal, circling around the net, creating space when he got to the high slot and then shooting through a screen there. That was just absolute beauty as he was just gaining speed as they entered the offensive zone there. But unfortunately, just like Tarasov, it was a complete 180 for Brad Marchand there in that game with the silly decision. And that is actually the moment where I knew the game was lost. That is my moment when Brad Marchand took that penalty. These Montreal Canadiens, remember when the Panthers had that long winning streak against the Habs for so many years through COVID, past a little bit past that, and it's not these aren't the same Habs that the Panthers had that long winning streak against. So I knew that when they went to the power play and all those skilled guys that they had the four forwards there, and at points, Ekblad, Mikkola, Lundell were actually taking away some of the lanes where it was just very, very pass happy for the Habs right before that opportunity for Nick Suzuki in front of the net, which Lundell actually got away with the trip in that overtime on Slafkovsky near the blue paint. But the Panthers, for the most part, played it well when they were taking away those lanes. But still, the penalty to begin with for Marchand, that's when I knew.
Same moment for me. Yeah, when you look at this Montreal team, you could probably outgrind them. You can out grit them. You can out hit them. You can out forecheck them. You're not going to outskill them. That's a team that has a lot of shooters, some incredible puck handlers, some guys who have elite vision. You're not going to outskill that team. That's not the game you want to play against them. Especially when in an overtime situation, it's 4-on-3, a power play. You got the long change. Thought they almost got out of it when the puck goes out of play after a long stretch where they couldn't clear the zone and Suzuki hits the crossbar. So felt like they were close, but yeah, you're just not gonna win in that situation. They could have scored multiple goals or multiple times before finally putting that in. If they weren't passing so much, they had plenty of shooting lanes and chose not to take them. They end up getting the tap in. So,
yeah, and the fact that the penalty was committed so early, you really thought, man, if the Panthers were going to get that extra point, they were really going to earn it, or the Habs were going to find a way to just miss an opportunity, which we almost saw right before that, as you mentioned, with the play on the post for Montreal there. But it is the end of 2025, which means that the Panthers have played their last game of 2025. Although we have a Winter Classic game to look forward to on Friday, before we get to that game, let's look at the year in review for the Florida Panthers and just look back at the great moments of this last year as the Panthers hoisted their second consecutive cup. We're going to do that next on the other side of the break here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Segment number 3 here on this Wednesday, December 31st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Winans Wednesday edition of the show. And I want to wish everybody out there a happy and safe New Year, and hope that everybody has some great health in 2026. As they say in Spanish, salud to everybody. I'm really looking forward to Friday for the Winter Classic. I'm already in South Florida for the event and really, truly looking forward to the event. But let's look at the year in review for the Panthers. 61 total wins when it comes to the entire year, regular season and post for the Panthers. Not as many as 2024. They had 69 that year. But Jacob, what are your highlight moments regarding when it comes to the year outside of the obvious of winning the Stanley Cup?
Yeah, well, definitely the most obvious is winning the Cup. No doubt about that. Another one is not even, it's definitely Panthers related, but not directly a Panthers game, but Four Nations, USA, Canada.
February 15th, especially.
Yep, such a cool moment for hockey here, and just for that rivalry. And then a number of Panthers players in that game had a couple of Panthers fighting early in that one with Matthew Tkachuk right off the opening draw against Brandon Hagel. Sam Bennett and Brady Tkachuk drop him right after. But it's funny that Tkachuk versus Hagel fight, who would have known how Brandon Hagel and the Panthers would end up continuing their year with each other. Definitely some funny foreshadowing. Well, not funny, but some foreshadowing there looking back on it. Another series win against Tampa felt really good. That's a highlight. Dominance against Carolina again. And the Maple Leaf series to come back in that one and giving Toronto another Game 7 loss. And again, the Panthers they've ended some teams, sort of broken up some teams' cores. Did it with Tampa. They sent Stamkos packing. They did it with Boston, retiring Bergeron and ultimately taking Brad Marchand. And then did it with Toronto too. They sent Marner out the door and on to Vegas. So Panthers are kind of the Grim Reaper of the East, and doing that again, definitely a highlight. And then just a ton of games in 2025 that were exciting, high energy, just everything you come to expect with the Panthers. And one thing that I can't move on without giving some credit to is Bill Zito just had a fantastic year. Some incredible trades. Seth Jones, Brad Marchand, few of those underrated moves, and took some guts to make some big swings in those trades, and they definitely panned out. So have to give him his credit and his due.
Not only trading for them, but the ability to re-sign all three pending free agents of Ekblad, Bennett, and Marchand, which I was saying from the time that they won the cup to free agency, I was saying 2 out of the 3, not all 3. You're not going to find a way. But Brad Marchand doing what Brad Marchand does during media day, saying, let's call a spade. The whole tax situation here in Florida helped them get it. And that sent fans outside of South Florida, that got them all mad. And of course, the Panthers celebrating even better than they did in 2024. And the fact that it said on the rings, we apologize to nobody. Well, that's the clean version of that quote. We're a family-friendly program, but also kind of the ups and downs that the Panthers kind of had to go through throughout the year. I'm very appreciative of the Panthers rebounding in the case of so many quite a few downs. Let's not forget that the Ekblad suspension right before the game in Boston, and to think that in that game the Panthers blew a lead. They were on their way to winning, and then they blow it, and then that's kind of the start of the kind of things like falling off a little bit in the regular season. And one of those games was a Panthers Habs game, funny enough, on April 1st after the home and home, which after the home and home, that was when Nico Mikkola had that slap shot across the ice that hit David Savard, and that created a little bit of a brouhaha there. But also the guts that Paul Maurice made to. It's funny because Mackey started off in your top 6, and then he was completely out of the lineup, and then he was on your 4th line off the power play, and then completely changing the 4th line, putting Nosek, Gadjevich, and Greer all together. And then there's a multiple stretch until the second game of the Stanley Cup final where they did not give up a goal against at 5-on-5. So that was an incredible line defensively. And that is to think that the Panthers won a second consecutive cup with a completely new 4th line. I know you mostly win it with your core players, but the fact that they were able to make it over then. Also, we're getting a new quarterback on the power play in Seth Jones with replacing Brandon Montour. They couldn't put Brandon Montour's money in the short term, but obviously LTIR helped open that space up when Matthew Tkachuk did go down. And then as the cap grew, it really helped the Panthers truly fit everyone else there. And also setting a record in the final, the most time leading in a final. It's funny enough because sometimes it didn't feel that way as we were experiencing the series, especially because the Panthers, they were up 3-1 in game 1 against Edmonton, and they ended up losing. And I was worried then after one game, but Brad Marchand double overtime winner. But then when you see that Edmonton came back in game 4, I was more relaxed after game 4 than I was after game 1 because of this simple fact, Jacob. Chris Knobloch during the final went through every single option at that point. mixing up the deep pairs, and then putting in his backup goaltender when Paul Maurice hadn't made one lineup change. That's kind of when you knew that the Panthers kind of had them where they wanted to. And that was my feeling when it was tied 2-2. I remember talking about it with Nick Fairbanks after the game and saying, I think the Panthers got this here.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that, because the next point I was going to make is, if you look back at the totality of 2025, it's pretty remarkable to look back and think of how many different times the Panthers' backs were truly against the wall, and they just continued to find ways out of these situations. It's pretty insane if you sit down and look at some of them. Just think about coming out of Four Nations, knowing Matthew Tkachuk, his regular season was over. Everyone internally, after knowing what we now know, what the injury was, everyone internally on the team had to know after Four Nations, Tkachuk's regular season is over. That's a back against the wall moment, and it was unknown whether he was going to make it back in time for playoffs, or if he did, what he was going to look like. Didn't stop them in that situation. Instead, the Panthers used that as an opportunity to get better and to fill holes in the lineup, and to still take a big swing on Brad Marchand, who, when they traded for him, was out injured on IR. Hadn't even gotten to see him play in a couple of weeks at the time that they traded him. So some big question marks there, and a big risk taken. And then you can point to different moments in each of the playoff series, except maybe Carolina, where the Panthers really had control the entire time. You can point to the Tampa series. That series could have gone a whole different way. You look at game 2, Aaron Ekblad gets away with the elbow on Brendan Hagel. The second they show the replay, okay, Ekblad's going to miss a couple of games for this. And they were losing. They were losing that game.
Mikkola also got a 5-minute major in that same game.
Mikkola got a 5-minute major in that game, and you're thinking he might get suspended. You're losing that game, and it looks like you could be coming out of that game heading to Tampa at 1-1 without Aaron Ekblad. Or I'm sorry, they had already gone to Tampa, but you're coming out of that game without Aaron Ekblad, and in a situation where you don't have, or you're losing that series 2-1. End up with Ekblad tying the game, Seth Jones scoring immediately after. They end up winning that one. Backs were against the wall in that moment. You look at round 2 against Toronto, backs are against the wall pretty much the entire time. You end up down 2-0. Game 3, it looks like you're on the fast track to losing it. Brad Marchand saves them in overtime, turns the entire series around. Third round, kind of had control over Carolina the entire time. That one was never really in doubt, except for big scare with Sam Reinhart suffering a knee injury in that one. Didn't know how bad it was, and Boquist comes in, fills in admirably again, which he did in Toronto when Evan Rodriguez got hurt. And then the Edmonton series, multiple times where their backs are against the wall. I think game 2, you're going to double overtime. If you end up down 2-0 in that series, it could look very different. Then the crazy game 3, fights all over the place. Edmonton tries to send a physical message. Definitely didn't really work. The Gadjevich fight. And then game 4, demoralizing loss. Had that game full control and blew it. And you're wondering, how are they going to respond? They're going to Edmonton. Building's going to be insane. Calvin Pickard looks like he's red hot. This could turn it for Edmonton. And they just stomped out the life of them for the rest of the series. It was multiple times, where, especially in the playoff run, backs against the wall, and the Panthers really, really elevated in those moments. So looking back on the year, you got to be grateful for it.
And you kind of knew that the Panthers were on their way to clinching at home and avoiding another trip when Sam Reinhart fell to his side and scoring that goal far side as well. That was the Panthers' night, and the fact that they were up 5-0 with 10 minutes left in that game 6 is like, whew, we can for sure breathe there when Sam Reinhart got those 2 empty netters, and then big saves from Sergei Bobrovsky. The double save from one of them from Gage Gonsalves in round 1, Logan Stankoven in the final, and then some great plays from like Barkov to Verhaeghe. Let's not forget that the Panthers were down 2-0 in that game as well, and they found a way to come back. So just so many great moments. And of course, Brad Marchand, like you mentioned, that shot that I believe it bounced off Morgan Riley, if I'm not mistaken. I might have the wrong player, but and Lundell, I remember he spoke there in the summer. Once they got that game, they knew that they where it had the ability to really turn it on and take control, kind of like Game 4 against the Rangers in 2024. The Panthers really knew that was kind of the turning point of their season. So many great memories, and I know we're probably missing one. If you guys want to comment on your favorite moments in the comments down below, make sure to do that. And I would love to read what you guys have to say about some of your favorite moments throughout the year there. But Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me on another edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. It's a loss for the Panthers, but the Panthers got 3 out of 4 points on this back-to-back, and we had a very successful 2025. So I want to wish you and your family a very happy new year and a safe one as well. So tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
Yep, you can follow me on X at JakeW_8. Happy New Year to you, man, and your family as well. Super excited to see all your coverage of the Winter Classic, and I hope that's a blast for you. And to all the viewers, listeners out there, Happy New Year. A safe new year to everybody. And I'm going to do something you're going to hate me for. I know you're an FSU fan, but we got the Cotton Bowl, Miami versus Ohio State, New Year's Eve. So my Canes fans out there, buckle up, should be fun, and go Canes.
Yeah, and go listen to Alex Dono on Locked On Canes for his coverage there, also from the Florida Panthers radio network. We can still be friends. Don't you worry, my friend. Although Florida State is right now in I'll say the cleaner word, crapper. I'll say that. But thank you so much, Jacob, and see you next week.
Looking forward to it.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.